Today we're going to talk about how to make artwork for CNC engraving using only free software. Welcome back to Cloud42, I'm James. In the last video we did some experiments with a Diamond Drag engraver in aluminum. We looked at different cutting speeds, different diamond point angles, and different amounts of spring pressure to try to find a recipe that works well. This time we are going to look at the free software that I use to create artwork for CNC engraving and the process of turning that artwork into G-code for the mill. To create the artwork for the engravings I made in the last video, I used a free software package called Inkscape. Inkscape is a vector graphics editor that is free. It's open source. You can get it from their website at inkscape.org. And if you come here, there's a download link. Click the download, and then you can see they have versions for Linux. They have a version for Windows, and I believe they have a version for Mac. And you can even get the source and compile it yourself if you want to. But in my case, I'm running on Windows 10, so I just downloaded the Windows version of Inkscape. Now, Inkscape you can think of as an open source alternative to Adobe Illustrator. Now, if you've got Adobe Illustrator, by all means, knock yourself out. That's great software for doing this as well. But a lot of people don't have that, so we're going to show today how to do this with Inkscape, which of course is free. Now, the key thing about Inkscape that makes it great for this application is that it is a vector graphics editor as opposed to a raster graphics editor. If we take a look at Microsoft Paint, which is a raster graphics editor that people are familiar with, we'll just draw an ellipse here, and you can see that looks like a smooth ellipse. But if we zoom in, you can see that it's really made up of pixels. So there's a grid of points here called pixels, and each pixel has a color. In this case, the colors are just black and white. And so as long as the pixels are small enough, you can create the illusion that you have a smooth curve or a smooth line or a smooth shape. Lines are the same way. As long as this is small enough, it looks like a smooth line. But as soon as the pixels are blown up, you can see that it's not really a smooth line. It's a grid of black and white dots. Now, this is great for creating images because, like I said, as long as you have the pixels small enough, your eye doesn't really see them. But it's no good for creating artwork for a CNC machine because the CNC machine doesn't just need to know in this grid where the different colors are. It needs a path that it can follow. So if we go over and do the same thing in Inkscape, let me draw an ellipse. Now when it's small, it looks the same as what we got in Microsoft Paint. But if we zoom in, you can see that as we zoom in, the line stays smooth. In fact, we can zoom in as far as we want, and no matter how far we zoom in, the line will still be smooth. Because in the underlying data that the software is working with, this is not a sea of pixels. It's not a grid of black and white dots. It's actually a mathematical shape defining the ellipse, and it uses what's called a path that defines the actual line. So for a CNC machine, this is perfect because we have a line that we can just output for the machine to follow. Now, the other thing that's great about this is that even after you've drawn, overlapping shapes, each one of these shapes is still defined as a mathematical shape. So I can go back to this first ellipse and I can edit it. I can move it around. I can change the shape of it. I can skew it. And we're going to take advantage of this when we create our artwork for engraving. And so every one of these, again, continues to be a mathematical definition and not just a bunch of pixels. If you have overlapping shapes that you've already laid down in other artwork packages like in Microsoft Paint, you can't really go back and do this because you don't really have the definition of what that object is. You just have the colored pixels in place, and you don't have the ability to go back and do this kind of editing. Well, that's kind of the basics of why we use vector graphics software like Inkscape to do engraving graphics. Now let's actually define something to engrave. Okay, let's create a version of the Cloud42 logo that we can use to engrave as a maker mark on tools. I've just opened up a new document here in Inkscape, and you can see the empty page. And we're not really creating a page of artwork, so I don't want this here. I'll click over here on the little document with a wrench, and this will pop up the document properties, and I will click Show Page Border. I'll uncheck that to get rid of it. Now the Cloud42 logo is a text mark. It's just made up of text, so I'll click the text tool. I'll click here and type Cloud. Now I'll highlight all of that, and I want to change the properties of the text. The little T button over here on the right opens up the text and font window. I'll choose my font, which is Agency FB, bold condensed, and let's make it big, 144 point, and we click Apply. Okay, so we've got that, and let's create one more piece of text here, which is the 42, and we'll do exactly the same thing. That's also Agency FB, bold condensed, 144 point, apply. Okay, so now we've got these two things. Now if you've taken a close look at the logo before, you know that the cloud is italic and it lines up and overlaps with this angle here on the 4. So if I just click on the object here, I've gone back to the pointer tool, I get these handles to be able to stretch it. And if I click again, then I get handles to be able to skew and rotate. So I can just grab this top handle and skew it over. Now I'm going to run these together so I can see what's going on. And I'll zoom in just by holding Control and using the mouse wheel. And I will just skew this until the angle looks about right. And I'll just keep moving this closer and closer so I can see the angle better. So I can skew it until it matches more or less exactly. And that is going to be close enough. Now the next thing I want to do before I actually put this in its final position is I want to convert these. Right now these are text objects and I want to turn them into paths. So if I click this and go up here to Path, Object to Path, it's now converted this text, so it's no longer an object, it's now a path. And if I go over to Fill and Stroke, I can go to Fill and say I want no fill, and on Stroke I want a black line. And Stroke Style, I can set that to, whatever. In this case is about 1/4 millimeter. And let me do the same thing over here on the 42. I will go Path, Object to Path, and then turn off the fill and turn on the stroke. So now you can see what's really going on here is we have, instead of a font, we have outlines of the letters of the text. So I'll take this my pointer tool, and I'll take the 42 and slide it over so that it lines up. And in fact, as it came into place, it snapped into place right there. So we can go in here and see that those letters are perfectly lined up on top of each other. Make sure the corners don't have anything weird going on. Same thing right down here. And I would say that is close enough. Okay, now that I have these overlapping, I need to combine the H and the 4 into exactly one path. Right now you can see I have separate paths that are overlapping, but these lines in the middle here, I don't want them to be there. So I'm going to click on the cloud, and right now it's one set of paths that are all grouped together. And I'll just go up here under Path and say, under Object, and say Ungroup. And so now I have separate selectable paths for each letter. I'll do the same thing on the 42, Object, Ungroup. And so now I can select just the H, hold Shift, select just the 4, and now I can go up here to Path and say Union. And when I do that, it's going to take these two overlapping paths and it's going to convert them into just one path that encloses the same area. So I say Path, Union, and you can see now the H and the 4 have become one. Now I'll just rubber band select everything here, and I will say Object, Group. And so now I have this Cloud42 with my stylized H and 4 as one group that I can move around independently. Okay, let's add some more elements to this. Let me grab the text tool, and let's say USA 2019. So I like to mark the tools with the date. So go back over here to Text and Effects. We'll use the same Agency FB bold condensed, And I want the size a little bigger than that. Let's try 64 and see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing on this. I'll say path, object to path, and then we'll come in here with the fill and stroke and turn off the fill, turn on the stroke. Okay, I'd actually like this to be a little bit wider, so I'll just go ahead and skew it right here, or just actually stretch it out. And we'll just sort of position that about where I think it's going to go. Okay, that looks good to me. Now let's put something around this. Let me click and draw an ellipse. It goes around the whole thing. Get that about where I think I want it. Go back to the arrow tool, and then I can move this around and adjust. This isn't going to take much adjustment. I think I got it just about the right size. So put that there. Now that makes the USA 2019 look a little bit off center. Move that around. Let's see, how does that look? I think I want this a little bit shorter. Let's adjust this a little bit. Kind of just looking at the clearance here and here and here and here. So I think this is just about ready to go. I'm happy with this. Let's save it as an SVG. So I say File, Save As, and make sure that what we have selected here is SVG, in this case Inkscape SVG. And we'll call this Cloud42 Toolmark. Okay, let's take that saved SVG file, bring it into Fusion 360, and turn it into an engraving. This is the model of the toolpost dial indicator holder that we've made over the course of the last few videos. Let's take that tool mark we just made and engrave it onto this surface. So to create the engraving, we need a sketch. So I'll just right-click on this surface and say Create Sketch. Now once I have a sketch, I'll go up to the Insert menu and say Insert SVG. Now I can just click on the file folder to select a file. And I'll select this Cloud42 toolmark.svg file that we just exported from Inkscape. And there it is. And we need to get it into position. Let me rotate it 90 degrees here and move it onto that surface. It's too big, so I'll use the hand tool to resize it. Just a little smaller. Let me use the look at feature on the sketch, which rotated in a funny angle. Okay. I'll just use the handles and move this around and get it right where I want it. That looks pretty good. So I'll say OK. And now those lines become a part of the sketch. And I can say Stop Sketch. And now we have a sketch on this surface that we can use for engraving. To engrave, we'll just go over to the manufacturer workspace, and the first thing we need is to create a setup. So new setup, and the model, I'll select just the body so it'll ignore everything else. Let's get our Z direction going the right way. Okay. So now our coordinate system's going the right direction, and let's select the center of this so we can center up on it. Okay, so there's our coordinate system for stock. We'll just say that there's no extra stock because we're just going to mill, or just going to engrave directly on this part. Okay, that's our setup. So we can come in here and say 2D trace. And for the model that we want to trace, the geometry, we can just select all the lines that we would like to trace. Okay, those are all the lines. So let's go and select a tool. Now for the engraving tool, we'll go ahead and just create a new tool. And there's not a diamond drag engraver in here, but the easiest thing to choose is a chamfer mill. And we'll just set the shaft diameter to 25 thou. And the taper angle to 45 degrees, and the tip diameter to 0. Diameter 0.25. and that will be close enough. Now, this is what the tip will look like if we're using a 90 degree. If we're using a 120 degree tool, then we would need to change this to 60. And so that gives us the correct geometry at the end. And the only reason that matters is just so that Fusion can keep track of whether we're running into anything with the side of the tool. So let's go up to feed and speed. Now, in reality, this thing's not going to be spinning, but I got to put something in here. I'll just say 30 RPM, and the cutting feed rate, let's make this 30 inches a minute. Same with the lead in, same with the lead out, same with the ramp, though it doesn't really matter. And same with the plunge, doesn't matter. We'll just set these all to 30 inches per minute. Now, it thinks this thing has teeth, but ultimately it doesn't matter. And then we can assign a tool number in the post processor. I'm not going to bother with that right now. So we have that defined. We've defined our geometry. So in the heights tab, by default, the feed height, and this is the height at which it goes to the feed rate when the tool's coming down, switches from rapid to feed, is 200 thousandths. And that often really slows things down because the last 200 thousandths as the tool is descending towards the part are done a lot slower. So I could change this to something like 50 thousandths. If you feel like living dangerously, you can make this even smaller so that the tool will rapid even closer to the work before it slows down. The nice thing about having it slow down earlier is you have time then to see if things are going wrong and you can hit the emergency stop. But the downside is it makes everything take longer. So then on the passes tab, we want to turn off chamfer because we're not cutting a chamfer. It's on because we chose a chamfer mill. And then we'll go into stock to leave. Now this, if we set stock to leave at 0 and 0, then it will just touch the tool to the work. We don't want that. We want to compress the spring of the diamond drag engraver. So on the axial stock to leave, I'm going to say minus 0.05 because I'd like to compress the spring by 50 thousandths. And then we just need to make sure that on our transitions we don't have a lead in or lead out. We'd like to just plunge directly into the work. We don't want to come scooping in from the side to scratch it up. Click OK. And that should be it. That is our tool path. Let's simulate it and see what it's going to do. The tool is going to come down and it's going, now it's showing it here embedded into the workpiece. Now it's not really embedded into the workpiece because it's spring loaded and the spring is going to compress. And then the tip is just going to drag over the top of the workpiece, actually engraving the artwork. You can turn on the stock and turn off the modeling and kind of see what it's doing here. And there is our engraving. Now that we've got the toolpath defined, all we have to do is run the post processor to create the G-code. Post this out. And there's the G-code. And once we have the G-code, we just have to load it into the mill and run it. As the G-code tells the mill to dive below the surface, of course the tip isn't actually going very far into the surface. Instead, the spring in the tool is compressing, and that's what provides and evens out the cutting force. And the more negative the Z-coordinate, the more cutting force there is, up to, of course, a limit. Eventually the tool will bottom out, and you definitely don't want to do that, so you want to measure how much compression you have. But generally it's 3/8 to half an inch on tools like this. You just need to experiment and figure out for a given material and cutting speed and diamond how much force you need to get the effect that you want. As you can see, the results look pretty good. You will definitely be seeing this tool again in future videos. If you're enjoying these videos or if you found this useful, please give me a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe to the channel and leave me a comment. I'd like to know what you think. Thank you for watching.